What's going on, everyone? Today we're going to be talking about Bleeding Hearts. So this is the first title in the return of DC's Vertigo line, and it's by Deniz Camp. Stippen Morian is the artist, and Matt Hollingsworth is the colorist. So going into this issue, I honestly didn't quite know exactly what to expect. I knew it was going to be a zombie story. I saw the preview. I didn't really read it. I kind of just skim through the pictures because sometimes I'll read previews, but other times I just don't want any spoilers at all. But anyway, this was one where I didn't really want any. So I'm like, okay, going into this blind, don't really know what it's about, but zombies, we'll see how it is. But Deniz Camp is one of my favorite writers right now, and in general, I just really love the work he's doing with Martian Manhunter, sort of crisis events, ultimate stuff. Just really loving his work overall. So I'm super hyped about this. So with that being said, the comic itself overall, I really liked it. I thought it was really good. I thought it got better and better as the story went on, because initially I thought it was interesting. I'm also going into it with an open mind, so I think that matters. But anyway, I thought it was interesting, but I got more so hooked at let's say the 70% mark of the book, and after that, and especially with the way it ended, I found myself just being okay, now I'm really excited for issue 2, and I'm excited to see where the story goes, because it was a lot of world building, a lot of explaining of what life is like and how the people are and how his horde is and whatnot, the main character. And it was less of what is this really about, So when that really kind of started to get established throughout the story, you get more and more hooked, you know what I mean? So anyway, that's why kind of around that 70% mark, I was like, oh, okay, all right. And then when it ended, I'm like, okay, now I'm feeling pretty good. So, to get into the plot itself, this is a story about zombies. A zombie apocalypse happened. There's a ton more zombies in relation to humans, all that stuff. But it's told, as you can kind of tell, from the zombies' perspective. Specifically, it follows that main character named Poke. They actually have these really long names, so his name is actually Mouse Pokes Golf Ball Out of Head Hole, and his best friend is Mushrooms Grow Up All Over Little Forests, and because he's got mushrooms on his shoulders. It's all some quality, but something that they did. There's some people, this one person in particular, who's named after something that he did that no one liked, so his name is always his crime, and someone did something crazy, so they have that name, and their horde is also named something pretty long as well. So I think that alone is pretty interesting. The zombies are intelligent, much like people. But again, yeah, the story is told from their perspective, which is pretty cool. So most of the book, we're getting taken through what is his actual horde like? What is he like? What is he thinking? Basically, he's got his rib cage is open. He has a heart that's beating, I guess, really loudly, or maybe he's just not used to it or something. And that's kind of something that he's hiding. But it's making him think maybe he's the vibe that I get is he's a little more human than the others. And yeah. So anyway, again, the whole time throughout the story where he's just telling us about how life is and how they are, and the horde is really for each other. They're big on the community. They obviously love eating people. They surprisingly prioritize each other, and they've vastly pretty much exterminated mostly all of the human population. There's really not many humans left. They're looking for 2 in their entire area, and they heard of a little settlement of a few hundred people across the country. So yeah, it's there's just not much, kind of any typical really well into zombie apocalypse show or story that you can think of as far as the state of the world goes. Again, I think the fact that the zombies are intelligent really makes a difference. What gives the story a lot of substance is the fact that that main character Poke is contemplating whether or not what they're doing is actually good. The storytelling is very, very good because it sets you up to think a certain way, and then the character acknowledges it. For example, Poke tells a story about how they so after you read that, you're like, holy shit, that is fucked up. And then right after, that's when he first says, because this is towards the end, that's when he first says yo, Mush, are we evil? So that sort of inner conflict is, again, what's making the story really interesting. After this issue ends, we still don't quite know exactly what it's going to lead into. Is it going to be constantly, I mean, there's some characters that show up at the end, which I won't share the scene just in case, because I want to show a little bit less about this issue, just because I do think you should go read it. It'll be really cool, and I want to save some of those things for you if you haven't read it yet. But anyway, what happens at the end, basically, you could see something coming from that. but like, we'll just have to see. The conflict that I've been explaining this whole time is like the main thing that we know of so far. Either way, that's really interesting, but there's probably going to have to be, and I imagine there is, something else that's really going to help carry that narrative. Either way, like I'm saying, I think that it's a really interesting perspective. I think Deniz Camp, from what I've read already, like if you've read Assorted Crisis Events or Martian Manhunter, like he really likes to tell his stories and send kind of like a meaningful message, but in like a different way, a different medium. Like for example, in Assorted Crisis Events, like these everyday stories, like the one about Alzheimer's and stuff, but told through the lens of like these temporal phenomenon, and like the Martian Manhunter about human emotional and self-growth told through the lens of like a Martian who can like feel your feelings and the powers of the psychic abilities and stuff. So that what is life, what is morality and everything told through the lens of zombies, pretty interesting. So I really like it. It really makes you think. This one I think a little less than Martian Manhunter and the Sort of Crisis Events so far, but I could definitely see it getting to that point. A lot of people, I say that because a lot of people think Martian Manhunter is confusing, which like I understand, but I think that if you think Martian Manhunter is maybe somewhat cool, but you think it's confusing, you won't feel that way about Bleeding Hearts. Definitely, I don't want to make that comparison, but just that sort of message, you know what I mean? Anyway, those are like my overall feelings with Bleeding Hearts. I'm really happy with this. I'm excited for more DC Vertigo titles, but I also am just really excited to see where this goes. Like I said, like it was really interesting throughout, but about like the 70% mark and on, I was really like, okay, this is cool. And now I'm like really, really excited for the next issue. So overall, a very solid issue, great world building, and great to set up the whole plot and narrative. So those are my thoughts. Let me know what you think. This was really fun to talk about and read. So come back to this video and leave a comment if you end up, checking it out after. Or like I said, let me know what you think in general if you already read it. But yeah, so that's it for this video. Thank you so much for watching. That was Bleeding Hearts. And yeah, take care.